Hi teacher, my name is Mr Yang from DACC 2020 March intake, and today my group will bring the presentation of our Principles of Taxation group assignments, which is employment income. So our group member have me, Mr Yang, Yeoh, Choot Weilin, Kwan Yue Hang, and Liew Yong Xuan. So let us start with the introductions of this assignment. The topic of our assignment is employment income. So what is employment income? Employment income is defined as a pay piece of works, which is known as salaries and wages. Employment income is also an important source of revenue to the government, as the government can get income tax from the employment income. Employment is defined as a relationship between master and servants, while in the relationships, employee is the servant, or also known as an appointment or holding an office, such as finance manager and director in a company, while the employer is the master that paying the salaries to the employees. So Section 2 and Section 3 will mention that employment income shall be deemed to derive in Malaysia under the following situations, and there are 5 types of employment income mentioned in Section 13.1a to Section 13.1e. Now, let us look at Section 13.2 and Section 13.3. Section 13.2 had mentioned that gross income in respect of gains or profit from employment shall be deemed to be derived in Malaysia in the following situations. Section 13.2a, employment is exercised in Malaysia for any period, and Section 13.2b, leave attributable to the exercise of employment in Malaysia. While Section 13.2c mentions that employee perform outside Malaysia duties incidental to the exercise of employment in Malaysia, and D mentioned that the employee is a director in a company, but the employer is a Malaysia resident. And Section 13.2e mentioned that employee work aboard in aircraft or ship for business activities, which the employer is a resident in Malaysia. While Section 13.3 mentioned a special situation that employment income shall be deemed to be derived in Malaysia, which is the employer is a citizen and works in a public service or statutory authority. The employment is exercised outside Malaysia or leave attributable to the exercise of employment outside Malaysia. I pass the next part to Zewei.
Hi, I'm Yeoh. Today I'm going to present about Section 31A and Section 31B. So basically, what is Section 31A? Section 31A refers to gross income of employees in terms of gains or profits from an employment regarding to their having or exercising the employment. Therefore, it includes wages, salary, remuneration, bonus, or perquisites. Perquisites means benefits that can be convertible into cash. So, as I mentioned about having or exercising before, having or exercising refers to a benefit may be received by employee from his employer or third parties. Now, we'll have 2 cases regarding having or exercising, which are covered against Barrett's and fall against Johnson. Now, we'll look at the first one, which is covered against Barrett's. In this case, it will help that the services rendered by the employees at the same time they receive some tips from his employer or third parties, then it will liable to tax. Now we look at the second case, which is fall against Johnson. In this case, it will help that the bank clerk is received £130 for his personal success in the examination, therefore it was not liable to tax. And bonus is one of the elements under Section 31A, and bonus is either contractor or not contractor. We have a tax case which is Radcliffe against Courts. In this case, the Radcliffe against Court, you can conclude that sometimes what we call is gift, but actually it's a bonus given by the employer, then it would be computed under Section 31A. And secondly, about the allowance. Allowance is the amount paid by the employer to the employees, and we'll have a tax case regarding allowance, which is Ferguson against Noble. A surgeon was given a clothing allowance to purchase suitable clothes, then it was accessible to tax. And now I'm going to present about Section 31B. So basically, what is Section 31B? Section 31B is the gross income of an employee from employers, also come from benefit in kinds that are provided by the employer for the use of enjoyment of employees. And benefit in kinds are not convertible into cash or money. However, it will be given some exemptions such as medical, childcare benefits, leave passage, and the purposes of benefits to perform his employment duty. So what I'm talking about the leave passage is enjoyed by an employee and his close family in a calendar year. It's tax exemption, but the limits are 3 leave passage for travel within Malaysia and 1 leave passage for travel between Malaysia and place outside Malaysia. Means that you travel to other countries overseas. Then we have 2 cases regarding leave passage, which are National Land Finance Cooperative against Director General of Inland Revenue. It was held that the Inland Revenue Board Malaysia should have distinct authority to make pricing adjustment. If not, any ambiguity in the law will be simply interpreted by the taxpayer. And the second case is talking about the Ketua Pengarah Hasil Dalam Negeri against MCI Society Limited. It's because the exemption from the public ruling was not removed with clear words to attain the specific performance or purpose. The case also provided that any ambiguity in the law must be compliant with the interpretation of the taxpayer. So I think that's all from me. Thank you.
Hi guys, I'm Choot Weilin. Today I'll present on the types of employment income, gains or profit under Section 31C. So what is Section 31C? We call it as VOLA, Value of Living Accommodation. It is a gross income of an employee in respect of gains or profit from the employment includes an amount of the utilization of living accommodation provided for the employee by or on behalf of the employer rent-free or otherwise. Living accommodation supplied for the employee by his employer is a benefit in kind that cannot converted into cash. Under Section 31C, we know that the value is considered as gross pay from employment is the estimation of the empty convenience, which means that without considering the estimation of other amenities or conveniences given. In the circumstance that the living space is completely outfitted, the expenses of unfurnished accommodation should be registered by excluding the assessment of furnishing and fixtures from the total value of accommodation. Moving on, there are a few methods to calculate the assessable benefits under Section 31C. First of all, if accommodation is offered unfurnished accommodation to an employee or service director, the amount is either defined value of living accommodation or 30% of the employee gross pay under Section 31A, whichever is lower. Next, if it is given to a non-service director by the company, the value is the complete amount of defined value of accommodation. Next, if accommodation is offered in a hostel or hotel in a plantation or forest, for employee and service director, the value is 3% of the employee's gross income under Section 31A, while for the non-service director, the amount will be the full defined value of accommodation. And the most important part is, when living space is given for less than 12 months in a base cycle, the sum will be considered like a gain should be reduced appropriately. So that's all for my part. I'll pass it to next.
Hi sir, I'm Kwan Yue Hang. So today I would like to present about the type of income under Section 13(1)(d), which is an approved fund. First of all, let me take a look at the definition of unapproved funds. Unapproved funds is a fund that contributed by the employer and any income procured, such as the interest rate and the reward by such unapproved fund and credited to the employee. And the sum regularly removed at the time of retirement of such employee, and the assessment amount is limited to the contribution of the employer and the interest acquired. The payment paid by an employer are incorporated as a feature of the gross pay from that employment. Meanwhile, unapproved funds would not be obtained if the employer had not made any commitment in regard of the worker. In order to have deeper understanding, let us take a look at one of the Malaysia cases, which is LYS v Director General of Inland Revenue 1974. In this case, an employee served the company since 1st August 1952 and made contribution of 44,906 from a provided fund after resignation of 26 February 1969. The provided funds was an approved provided fund on the beginning, but the approved status has been revoked on 1st January 1968. He cased employment on 31 February 1967 and received exemption from income tax made on his behalf by the employer contribution. Since the amount received by the employee and the amount of 44,906 was received after the revocation of the exemption, that is considered as income received from an unapproved fund. Hence, the full amount is taxable according to Section 13(1)(d). So, this is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Hi sir, my name is Liew Yong Xuan. Now it's my turn to present my part, which is Section 13(1)(e), compensation for loss of employment. So, what is compensation for loss of employment? It considered as gross income on behalf of benefits or earnings from employment. It comprises any payment given to the employee from the employer, whether previously or after the suspension of employment in the top of covenant, any allied agreement or arrangement restricting the activities of an employee to be hired in employment of a similar kind. In this case, reimbursement of compensation for job loss might happen in some situations. One of the most common situations is that they are made irrelevant and dismissed prematurely. Situations that violate the law, such as wrongful dismissal or violating the contract of employment, might cause this kind of payments occurs. The scope include incomes in notice period, restitution of breach of contract of services, payment for the termination of the employer's responsibility under contract of services. Next, I would like to talk about the Malaysia cases that implemented Section 31E. In cases of Comptroller General of Inland Revenue, there was a chief staff surveyor had worked in the company for more than 11 years. However, there was an agreement can be terminated within 3 months. The building society and its employees reached a consensus that the employee would be allowed compensation of loss of employment if at any future time it was compulsory to declare staff redundant. According to the Federal Court, the taxpayer was paid for 8,120 ringgit leave pays and 28,050 ringgit for redundancy payment by following the agreement. In this respect, the company was under a legal obligation to give the taxpayer 3 months notice, which was upheld by Privy Council, as it was an ethical commitment to treat him fairly and generously after 11 years employment. Last, I will pass to Weilin for the conclusion.
In conclusion, employment income will be taxed in Malaysia under situation mentioned in Section 32 and Section 33. We have also discussed 5 types of the employment income. As a quick summary, Section 31A computes the gross income of an employee from an employer in regards to having or exercising the employment, whereas Section 31B computes the gross income of an employee from an employer in terms of benefits in kind. For Section 31C, it refers to the gross income of employees include the sum of utilization by the living accommodation in Malaysia. Section 31D is the unapproved pension of funds that are made by an employer, while Section 31E considered as the gross income of an employee in terms of compensation and loss of employment. After computing the employment income for Section 31A to Section 31E, the taxpayer could claim the tax relief to determine his chargeable income. Then, the taxpayer would refer to the tax rate to decide the amount payable and rebates that the taxpayer is eligible for. So that's all. Thank you.
So now is the Q&A section. So question 1. What have you learned about employment income from this assignment? So from this assignment, what I have learned about employment income is that I have get a better understanding on the definition and legislations of employment income. Other than that, I have also learned that in what situations employment income shall be deemed to be derived in Malaysia, that mentioned in Section 32 and Section 33. So basically, Section 32 are mentioning a normal situation, while Section 33 are mentioned as special situations, that the employment income shall be deemed to be derived in Malaysia. Other than that, I have also learned how to differentiate the types of employment income according to the Section 31A to Section 31E. I've also learned how to calculate the employment income according to every section, such as monetary benefits that are convertible into cash that mentioned in Section 31A, benefit in kinds that are not convertible into cash that are mentioned in Section 31B, and also I have learned how to calculate the living accommodation, which is mentioned in Section 31C. Is either taking 30% of gross pay that mentioned in 31A or the defined value of living accommodation, whichever lower. Besides that, I have also learned unapproved funds and compensation for loss of employment, which are mentioned in Section 31D and Section 31E. Other than that, I have also get a better understanding of taxations through the tax cases that we did research on these assignments, and also I have learned that the exemption of employment income, such as leave passage. So through this assignment, I get a big reward as I learn many things and gain many knowledge about taxation that might benefit me in the future. So question 2, what have you learned from working as a group? So basically, how our group functions. Our group will usually have discussion on WhatsApp call every time, and also every members are encouraged to share their ideas and opinions. After distributing the jobs, we will also help each other when we face difficulty. And after everyone has done their part, we will exchange with each other and check the mistakes. So this will ensure that we will submit the best work. So through this assignment, I have learned that how to communicate with others, and also I have learned that we should help others when we are stronger, and we should seek for help when we need or facing difficulty. Anyway, this is a very good experience as teamwork makes the dream work. That's all for my group presentations. Thank you.